Peter, you're so important. We refuse to start without you.
I think my desktop goes, oh, I don't want to get doing one of those meetings again. It just cried and dropped. So I'm scrambling around trying to find a camera to plug in that would work. So I might not look my fabulous self, but
You look like you lost weight.
that's a good thing. Do we have everybody? No.
We're missing 2 people, but we have enough people to get started and we're recording
Yeah.
now.
Can we,
Okay.
yeah,
All right, let me go. I don't know. I really don't know what happened to that laptop. It's too bad. So I'm at 7:16. I apologize. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And we have myself, Peter Goodney, as chair. We have Tim Fling. We have Lisa Dunderdale, Cindy Foster, and John Mello in attendance. Do we have a scribe for the meeting? Anyone?
Lisa doesn't feel well and neither do I. So we're not sure we're gonna stay with it.
So I don't mind doing it. I still owe the meetings from the last minute, but this one I think will be simpler. So I'll be the scribe.
Thanks.
Thank you,
John.
John.
Okay, John, I have you. Speaking of minutes, I have the 1-5 minutes that I circulated earlier in the week. Hopefully everybody got a chance to peek at those. Also last minute, well, maybe about an hour ago, I did circulate the 12-8. I thought they were already circulated, but I'm not sure that they were. So if enough people had a chance to look at those, we could approve those as well. But why don't we vote on the 1-5 minutes while we have it?
I have some changes to it.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else does, but I think for simplicity's sake, I'll share my screen real quick here
Yeah.
and just show the changes I have. And if anybody else has changes, I'll do it live and then we can call this good.
That'd be great.
Okay, is my screen up for you folks?
Can you
Yeah.
make that a little bit bigger? Do you mind, Tim? Thanks. That's great.
Good, good, good.
So if I'll start with my quick changes. On lines 45 area, it said that I suggested the 10 dB over ambient. I don't remember suggesting 10 dB over ambient.
Yeah,
so
I didn't either.
Actually, I think you did, Tim. I was listening to the rerun. I was looking at YouTube. You did mention specifically 10 decibels above ambient.
Okay, I'd have to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
So for the record, though, it's not typically a position that I have taken. So I'd go back and listen to it and see what exactly I said, but I don't remember saying that specifically. So I just wanted to strike that because it's not necessarily the position I support.
I would encourage you to go back and look at it because you did say that. I looked through it just before the meeting.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm happy to then suggest, any other changes you guys have, but postponing the final vote on this today. So I can then confirm, but
Yeah.
otherwise I just take it out of the record.
I mean, I'm comfortable if you want to wait another week. That's fine if everybody else is cool with that.
Yep.
It give you a chance to see yourself on TV again, I guess.
Well, can we do
I don't think it's
feedback
that,
on it
that
though?
big of a.
Yeah, we can take other feedback now too, and then I can circulate this document as the updated minutes.
Okay. How do you folks feel about that? You guys okay with that? Cindy?
With waiting on them or giving
Yeah,
feedback
waiting until
now?
next week to approve the January 5th.
Yeah, but I'd like to get the feedback done now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
And John?
Yeah, yeah, it's fine. Just let's get feedback.
Okay. Is there any other feedback other than that?
Cindy,
I had on line 8, on line 7. I don't think it's Chair Gooney, and I think there's words that are mixed up on that line.
Are you, so the numbers got kind of messed up, so
Oh, wait, they did. Okay.
they start back over somehow. So I don't know how they start back over, but they could start back over on different pages. So just give me kind of a page number you think you're on and I'll find it.
I'm on page, it looks like page 3.
Okay,
Is it 2 or 3? Oh no, I see what you're talking about. Oh, this is a pain. It's either page 2 or 3, sorry. It was after we recessed, just after we recessed.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right there.
I think I fixed that typo that I saw.
Okay, and it says propose that we contractor hours separate. I think it's supposed to say that we separate contractor hours from homeowners. And then on the last page where we talked about meetings, I think the times should be in there. Clearly the times should be in there. So January 12th is supposed to be at 7 p.m. The 19th at 7 p.m. The 27th at 7 p.m. And February 2nd at 7:30 p.m.
Thanks for catching those.
No problem.
Outstanding work.
I'll fix the numbers when I do the revision for this. So that way, if anybody else has changed, it's easier. And then we can push this off to the next meeting. So I'm going to make a motion to accept the changes that we just went over and move the vote on the minutes to the next meeting.
I'll second that.
So we're going to take an actual roll call now.
Yes, that being second, I'll just go right by the list on the screen here. Tim,
Aye.
Peter Goodney, aye. Lisa,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
John.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Did everybody here get a chance? And it's, I understand if you didn't, the 12-8 minutes.
Okay, those are the ones that I did, right?
Yes.
Yes, I
That we
think so.
that we approved
no, I think-
last week.
Thought we approved them, right?
No, I think they were the
Okay,
ones
well,
we
the
did.
thing is, Katie in the town clerk's office was confused because of what I attached, and she said the attorney general has determined that a document is considered to be used at a meeting when the document is physically present and identified by name and its contents are discussed at the meeting. And she wants to know if she should go ahead and post them without the attachments or not. I guess if I just add the list of that say these are the like Lee did in the minutes that he just did.
Mhm.
He kind of summarized all of the stuff that we looked at. I think if I just add all of the items that I attached, because I don't think we should just leave them off.
No, I think too much is better.
Right.
If we addressed it at all, we should just throw it in there.
Okay, so if everybody's okay with that, I will update the 12-8 minutes with the list of documents that we looked at.
Sounds good.
That's what I believe I just sent out like an hour ago when I was going through some of the house cleaning things.
Oh, did you get back to her or?
I believe I sent it out to the committee.
Oh, okay. Did you send it to everyone? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't looked at it yet.
So
Okay,
if
so I'll
we don't
do
have enough
that.
people that looked at it, that's fine. We can put that off too. To the next meeting. That'll be even better because hopefully we'll have 2 more people.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just housekeeping stuff.
Yep.
So, and I did reach out, just so you folks know, I know Peter signed off a little early. I don't remember exactly when, but when I noticed it, I kind of made note of what we were doing and I did write him a little summary of what we did. Of course, it's all recorded too. And I told him, though we didn't have any real votes without him. So I wanted to, just make sure that, we were thinking of him. I know he has mentioned that he, gets tired over an hour, which that's why I tried to give that break. Hopefully, could stretch it a little longer, but I don't know what happened. He never said anything, but just to let you know what was going on. So we agreed at the last meeting for the next order was to discuss the MAHB template.
Peter, we need to approve delaying the 12/8 meeting notes, right?
Sure.
Is that
Yep. Is that, you making a motion?
sure?
All right,
Yes.
I'll second that one as well. We'll take a quick vote. Tim, do you want to delay?
Yes.
Peter Goodney will delay. Lisa?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yep.
And John?
Aye.
Unanimous to delay. Thank you for that. Just kind of curious on how we want to handle addressing this. I know Lisa mentioned last time, there was like 10 sections. We could do it one at a time type of thing. And I think even when I wrote the email to Peter, I kind of said, well, you could probably break it down into a couple categories, what you totally disagree, totally in favor of, or undecided. I thought that was kind of maybe a fair way of looking at it. And I don't know how, do we vote on that? Do we discuss it? Like, can we eliminate some of these things right away, or these must-haves? Like, I'm open for discussion on how to deal with how we go forward, addressing this document.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Cindy.
I didn't want to jump the gun on somebody raising their hand, so you guys got it.
Okay, I know that we talked about going through the MAHB template, but I did go through and marked it all up, but it's, I've said before, I am very concerned about lengthy, complicated documents and how much patience people have with that. And it made me remember, I have a draft noise bylaw that was drafted 3/6/17, and I think this was the one that Chief Pullhouse did. Does anybody remember?
Yep.
Yeah.
I do remember looking at something similar.
And it seems to cover many of the same things. It obviously includes his feedback, and it seems, oh, there you are. Hi, Chief. It just seems like to me, it seems much more direct and understandable. And I guess I would rather work with that document than the MAHB one, because I think there's so much that we have to take out or change or whatever, but that's my opinion.
Okay. Lisa.
I think it would be good to go through the MAHB template. I think we know that it's been used by other towns, so it's been approved by the Attorney General. I think it might be a good idea just to have a discussion around each of the sections. I think we'll probably move through each of them pretty quickly. Certainly the definitions are an important part of a noise bylaw. I mean, we've looked at them. Those definitions need to be there. It's just the way that bylaws are formatted. Let's not forget that the draft that Chief and Mr. Stivers had worked on was just a draft.
Right.
So I think it may be missing some components that are important in the drafting of a bylaw. So that's my thoughts. I think it might be a good idea to have like a discussion on each of the section if we don't think that we have the answers to go forward with that section, because I think there might be some things that we need to get approval on from the enforcement side of things. But I think, you know, we can probably move through things quickly, but I think it's important to have a discussion.
Okay.
Peter, Lee's here, so we need to recognize that Lee has joined the meeting at about 7:30.
Hi,
Yeah.
Lee.
Hi, I had on my calendar 7:30, so I just realized looking at the Zoom invitation as I joined that it said 7. Can you catch me up?
Well, yours truly thought it was 7:30 as well. And I had a computer meltdown, so I didn't join till, I don't know, we started the meeting at 7:16. So we started late. We're now in the process. We decided to postpone the acceptance of the 1-5 and 12-8 meeting minutes because there's some corrections there that we wanted to look at on some of them. And so we really probably didn't get much accomplished. What we're doing now is trying to talk to everybody and see on, we talked about reviewing the MAHB document. And I just kind of wanted to go around the room and see what people's thoughts were on how to exactly do that. So we talked to Tim and we talked to Lisa. And where did Cindy go?
And Cindy did.
Oh, I'm right here. No?
Oh, okay. I couldn't, you weren't lit up on my screen
Oh, okay.
for some reason. So we're just going around, you know, on how to address that.
Peter,
Yes.
I just wanted to comment, the document that myself and then citizen Stivers worked on for weeks and weeks, that was based on about 20 existing bylaw policies. At that time, we decided not to include the noise meter. That could always be included if the committee goes that way. But we really did a lot of hard work on, like I said, about 20, and we took what we felt was applicable to Southborough at the time, and we tried to cover everything in there and give the police discretion and enforcement. So that's just the background on that. That was all patterned over existing policies all over the state.
Do you know why that never went anywhere?
At the time, it was, I believe, Sam proposed it, and the board just felt that they had too much on their plate to move forward with it. That's my recollection of it.
Okay. I'm kind of like to, you know, I like to try to stick to the agenda, and that is what we agreed on at the last meeting. That we would review that document. I'm just still going to continue to go around the room and see, you know, what ideas people have. You know, we certainly can change our mind, but I think that it would only be fair that if we decided to do what, you know, as you just mentioned, review this other document, I think we would probably have to do that at another meeting and circulate the document, to be fair.
I just wanted to bring it up because it was brought up, so I just wanted to kind of give the background on it.
Yep. Who's Lee? You have your hand up?
Well, just whenever my turn is in turn about the MAHB document.
Okay. Why don't you take a turn now? How's that?
Sounds good. So I looked through that document and it sounded like we were heading away away from using, you know, noise meters, or at least using that as the criteria. That's where it sort of sounded like we were going. If that's the direction we did, this document, the MAHB, will need substantial modification and probably won't look very much like the original document. If we, you know, a number of the definitions, or at least a few of the definitions, will need to be redefined. For example, the definition of nighttime, because we spent our whole last meeting defining, you know, what daytime was, so therefore what nighttime is being left over from that. So I think that we would have a tremendous amount of wordsmithing if all we do is try to mold that document. I think the document that Chief Paulhus was referring to is one that was shared with us maybe at the beginning of our deliberations. And 'cause I remember we got two documents. One was, I think, the one from several years ago, and the other was from the previous town meeting that generated this committee, both of which were not adopted. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, next. Do you have anybody else? Tim, go ahead.
I mean, I have a similar comment to what Lee just said. In my pass through this, it seems like we thought it was a good starting point. In my review of where in my review of it, I think that it has more red than it has black words left behind. And I don't know if it's necessarily in our best interest to continue to think that this might be the best starting point, at least in my personal opinion.
Okay, John.
So when I was looking at the document, I was trying to, I know this is a goal that we can't reach, but could we actually have a one-page noise bylaw, something extremely simple? Obviously, I know that it's going to be more than complicated than that. It does have a few good items, but like when you talk about emergency use and so forth, Chief Paulus's document also has emergency use. So, that has more detail that's more pertinent to the town than this document. So I'm fine using either one, but there's going to be a lot of redlining if we use this document, because I'm more of a simplest sort of kind of a libertarian by mind. Keep everything simple, because it only gets complicated after you create something. So I know it's not really an answer, but I just think it's too much for us, especially after the last week's meeting, which is one thing I want to ask at the end of the meeting, which is, what we were proposing last week, how much does it really address, Lisa's and Peter's, frustration with their neighbors and so forth.
Lisa?
So John, just remember, it's not just Peter and I. There were several people in the survey that had the same issues. And there are several people at the town meeting that voiced their concern around noise. We're here representing everybody in the town.
I agree. And if I could interrupt you for a minute, the lady who talked about the construction happening all the time, we created allowed, noise times. I don't think it addresses her fundamental issue when they talk about all these leaf blowing conditions and so forth. You get a couple of days of no noise by the holidays and Sundays, but again, I'm just trying to think of. I don't like legislation. I think let's keep everything simple. I'm just trying to go back and say, how much are we really addressing some of the citizens? Because again, from where I'm coming from, I didn't realize, my local, friends in town might have been dealing with these noise issues.
I just also want to mention that both the draft document's 6 pages long. I just don't think it's a possibility to put it on 1 page. Or even 2 pages for that matter. And, that's the draft document. So, I think it would be great to be able to do that. But I think when it comes to a bylaw that needs to be approved by the Attorney General, I think there's certain things that they're expecting to see, unfortunately. So.
Can I just ask a technical question?
Sure.
For some reason, oh no, now it moved. Never mind, it must be my computer. I have this weird enter your search item box that I can't get rid of. But it must be my computer. Okay, I'm done.
So we heard from everybody, right? Except myself?
Mhm.
Okay. So, I have some of the same sentiments that John had. I went through the document and I thought that the areas that were most importance were the hours that I saw that we kind of addressed at the last meeting. I didn't really see much in there that we needed. I mean, if people use common sense when they're, applying for dealing with noise, do we need to know that a car, is tooting, it toots his horn is an exception? Do we need to put that, there's a lot of things in there that are it's common sense. We shouldn't have to spell that out for the average person. I thought we could do something very, very simple. We've addressed it, and keep in mind that I'm not sure what we need for a vote at town meeting, if it's half or 2/3, but if it's 2/3, if the survey's right, almost half the people don't even want one. So we have to win over like a half of those people, and to make it complicated and a little bit more restrictive than what we've already agreed on, I think it's going to be hard to do. I would think that if we just go with hours, it addresses the two biggest things that were brought to us was construction noise. It kind of limits that. And, the leaf blowers and the landscapes, it kind of limits that. So it addresses the problem. It may not be to everybody's satisfaction, but it is a step in that direction. And if this still is broken, they can add to it at future, they can put amendments to it in the future. It's just, we got to get something on the books. If we go in there with all these things, I think it's just going to turn people off. I think we could just do the hours that we talked about. And I also, in looking back, I would, instead of saying contractor, I would just say paid work and unpaid work would be the way I would look at it. If you're getting paid, it's these hours. If you're not getting paid, it's these hours and the dates and time, that we put some work into that. And I thought there was a lot of give and take in that, in doing those on both sides. So go ahead, Tim.
I am hearing a lot from people on kind of like the places where to take this. I think a best use of time right now might just be if we agree on what the sections would be. So we agree on a definition section. That seems like a pretty low-hanging fruit that we all can agree on. We agree on an hours section. We agree on definition, like we fill in these couple things, and then we can fill in what those are, and we can lift that verbiage from this document we just reviewed if it's a good one, or from chief policies on the next review. But if we could simply agree from this meeting on the sections that we would like to have, then I think we can say this section belongs here, and then we just agree on that. This section belongs here. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, and we build something quicker than trying to go through a document that we all say has different approaches and we like things about it. But if we can agree on an outline today, I think we might actually make some momentum moving forward versus going back and forth and debating documents.
Yeah. The agenda says to go through the document, and I reviewed the document. I'm prepared to speak on each section. I don't think we can go wrong if we go through it and we decide we don't have much left. That's fine. If we want to, let's just bang through it. I'm just kind of going around the room seeing how we want to do it.
I guess what I'm saying is, I think within the bounds of reviewing that, I think we can come up with an outline, and we're still within what the agenda says. And it may not be worth it to go line by line through that document,
Okay.
because I don't think it's a good use of our time right now. And if that's what we're going to do, then I would vote for adjournment of this meeting.
Yep.
Well, maybe not line by line, but maybe we could go through section by section, and then the
Right.
sections we want to include, we can put more in an outline form.
Yep. That's kind of what Lisa brought out the last meeting, and that's kind of what I was thinking we were going to do. And, I just don't know exactly how to do it. If we just want to go up with section 1 and talk about it for a little bit, and would it be fair? And Lee, I know you're the master on how to vote. Can we say yay, nay, and maybe? Like, I don't know how that, I guess the mechanics of it is what I'm a little unsure of, like on each section,
Well, it's not going to be set in stone. I think I think maybe we need to look at it further. Or maybe there's some sections that we're like, yeah, no one wants that one, and we can just take it
Right.
off the, or,
Mhm.
we can put some comments and that we'll come back and revisit it.
Okay.
Any
All
other
right.
thoughts on that?
Well, like if we started off with section 1, which apparently it makes sense, I guess, to have an authority, but, is the Board of Health the authority? Because I sort of thought the Board of Selectmen were going to be the authority.
I think that's a great question to ask Heather as well as Chief Paulhouse. I think maybe it's a combination of two. If you look further down, like,
Well,
If
before
we
we
have-
get into the document, I just want to talk to
Yeah.
Lee, make sure he's got his hand up, he's addressed, and then after he's done, everybody's had a chance to speak, we'll go right into the document.
All right, so I think that it's reasonable, and I like the idea that we just use it to make sure that we touch all the points that we want to touch, and without necessarily today trying to actually come up with language that we're going to amend. So I think just like last week, we looked at various hours and stuff, and we came up with what we thought the kinds of hours we would like to see in the final document. We can come up with the big concepts of what we want, and then we can look at the chiefs and the previous attempts documents to see whether or not any of them look like they're a better framework to be able to hold what we're trying to do. In terms of procedure, my understanding, and I'm not an expert on town meetings, but my understanding of committee work is that when you have a very large committee, which we're not, then using rules of parliamentary procedure are useful. When you have a small committee, you're much better off being informal. So while we're required, I think, to take votes on certain things, I don't think we're really required to follow formal rules of, no more than 2 amendments on a main motion and requiring, all the rules that you'll find in a parliamentary authority. Because I don't think any of the rest of you are parliamentarians, which I once was. So I would say being informal is probably the most useful thing for us. And when after we've come to an idea that we think that we all support, then we can create a motion to do that and take a vote on it. But I think how we get to that motion can be informal.
Okay. Tim, are you in a position where you can share the document?
I am. I have a bunch of red lines on my screen, so let me get a cleaner version of this, and I can pull it up.
Well, while he's doing that, what were the amendments or the corrections to my minutes? I saw that Tim sent another document, but I don't know what the corrections were.
I should have probably noted that. I don't.
I think I was the one that made most of the changes. It wasn't a lot. It was, there was one page in the page numbers like failed us. Now my pages are all mixed up, but it was just after the break. Tim had already fixed Chair Gooney, and it's just that sentence, the words were in the wrong order. It said proposed that we contractor hours separate from homeowners, and it should say that we separate contractor hours from homeowners. So that change was made. And I believe I added the times under all the meetings at the very close to the end, where it said the committee agreed to tentatively meet on January 12th, 19th, 27th, and 2nd. And I just asked for the times to be added in.
Thank you. I appreciate the corrections. It was quite the tour de force. I think I spent about 3 hours on them trying to get them.
Easy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Fortunately,
everybody has done a superb
on
job on these
YouTube,
meeting
you can
minutes.
listen to it at double speed.
The other thing that I did correct as well was I have continuous line numbers. The first couple pages were restarting. So the first 4 pages, I think, were the same numbering.
Yeah, I didn't know whether we wanted to start at the line numbers from the top of each page or started as for the whole document. So your recommendation is to use for the whole document. That's fine.
Yeah, because that way, if you ever say, like, actually what happened was we said, can we go to line number 8? But it was
I
page.
hear you. Yeah, you have to say page 8 line number, and then if it repaginates, it's no longer there.
Right.
Exactly. Okay, so I have this up. All I did was I took that document, copy and pasted it into a Word document. So
Okay.
if something did copy and paste incorrectly, please let me know. But as far as I know, that document is simply copy and pasted into something we can actually edit.
Tim, are you in can we make notes to that document, like live? If we agree or disagree on a certain thing, can we write that in there?
Yeah, I can put notes on the side of this one and I can save everything as a note if that's how we'd like to do it. If we think that a section doesn't make sense at all, I can do a cross through the whole section. You know, like, for example, we could do this sort of thing. You guys can see that clearly.
Mhm.
So if we want to do anything live or not live, whatever we want to do, I can just do it.
Does anybody have any objections to this? Okay.
No.
Nope.
Just a comment about something else that before we start. I was looking out at the guide to town meetings in terms of the vote that's required for things. As near as I can tell, because it's not really specific, is that the town meeting guide says that we can, at the town meeting, they can amend our report with a majority vote. So if they wanted to change an hour, it would only need a majority vote, for example. But to adopt the bylaw, because it's a town bylaw, it will probably need a 2/3 vote.
That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. All right, section 1, authority.
So, sorry, one more question
Go
before we
ahead.
dive into this. One of the other things I mentioned was, we were going to talk about using this to generate that outline idea. Is that, should I have a secondary document that has an outline of things we think belong, or is that more than we want to do right now?
I think if we just go through this document and put in let's just go through the document and see what we come up with at the end.
I think
You
you
know.
might end up with an outline.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll just see what we end up with, and then, you know, we may end up with an outline without even trying.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like with my minutes, you ended up at the end with that list of hours that I put in, that Tim had generated, that I put in at the very end of the minutes as basically a summary. And maybe that'll be the way to sort of summarize it instead of having a separate document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay. Section 1, authority. You know, when you look at regulations, a lot of times they have this section in, but a lot of, like the Mass General laws do not have sections like that. So I think it would be perfectly fine if you didn't have an authority. I mean, you're going to call the police, they're going to have the authority. They enforce bylaws. The fact that it's a bylaw, it's going to be up to them. That's what they enforce. If you wanted to make it somebody other than the police, I think you'd have to put that in. But I think it's a default that it's going to be the police. So I think that's an unnecessary section. Chief, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Certainly, it's a hot topic all over the country. We just had this discussion with the townwide mask mandate coming up, and that's a public health issue, and kind of had the discussion that we'll be happy to go in and document, but it's really under the jurisdiction of the Board of Health, and so are most of the items that we're talking about. So yeah, we can be an enforcement agent, but I would like to direct it more as a public health issue, and our discretion would be that we document it except in extreme circumstances, and reference it out for other departments to enforce, including the building department, the Board of Health, I've seen some noise bylaws where they also include the fire department and certain things. And Pete, you can back me up as a police officer. The criminal statutes, traffic statutes, they give officers broad discretion on whether to enforce them or not. And I think that's my main participation here is the police profession has become a very hard, complicated job. So I just want to keep it open that they have as much discretion, as possible. So including them as an enforcement agent or other aspects of the town or departments in the town, that would be a goal of mine for any input on this committee.
Okay, so my thoughts were, I mean, if the Board of Health wanted to do this, and then they should have done that. If the building department wanted to do it, they should have. I mean, I think we're together to address the common complaints from the citizens, like Lisa mentioned, Peter, the construction, the basic, the ground balls, the ones that are just obvious. And we're going to naturally call the police, and they're going to, because they kind of almost have the authority now to do it if they feel it's in their discretion to say, hey, that's too loud, shut it down, So that's why I thought the authority section is only needed if it's anybody but the police, which in this one here, it says Board of Health. So
Yeah,
that's why the default is always going to be the police.
Well, I
So
would
just
just
think we
make,
need to restate that.
I would just
So-
want to make sure that all those other boards have enforcement authority as well.
Well, they'd have to pass their own bylaw to do it. I mean, if they decide to, let's see what we end up with first, I guess, if we want to.
Can we pass it around the group?
Yep, sure. Yep. I'm gonna go down to Lisa. I see you got your hand up.
So I wanted to, actually, I was looking at the draft from the draft bylaw, and they had mentioned, Chief Paulus and Mr. Stivers had talked about both the police department would be in charge of enforcement of the provisions of this chapter, and the Board of Health, in compliance with the Mass General Law, assists in the enforcement of this chapter. I'm just curious, Chief, how would that work with the fire department enforcing is that a matter of, okay, you've been issued a citation, our police have, they were notified, and we were told that there was an issue around, okay, so, how would you pull those in? I mean, how, will enforcement happen if you have many hands in the process? I'm just trying to figure out how that would work. Would it be better to keep it to just two agencies? I think of this as a health issue because there are health ramifications around noise. So just wondering how, if you can give us an example of how that would work with, let's say, the building department and building hours.
I think it would have been, especially in your situation. So say the parameters were set, even in the building permit or along those lines, and they said that the starting time was 7 a.m. So the police show up, we document, you tell us what's going on, it's a clear violation, and we refer the report to the building inspector, who comes in the next day, and you might even provide a cell phone video for further backup, and that's a building department issue with the permit and the times, and they would have enforcement authority to write the contract of that ticket. Of course, the way we solve problems now, we try to solve it. Well, this is a one-time thing. You've been warned. We have some discretion. I just want to expand. Sometimes the police are made to get involved in areas that really don't have to do with public safety. Like you just stated, they're building problems, they're Board of Health problems, they're public health problems. In fact, I said at the meeting the other day for the Board of Health, I had sat down for the meeting and I had just checked my mailbox, and I get a Police Chief magazine, which is a national publication. And January's topic was police involvement in enforcing public health laws. So it's not just limited to Southborough. It's an emerging topic, even more so than when I sat down with Sam Stivers in 2017. It's really emerged.
So I'm wondering if Heather can maybe comment on the Board of Health's role in enforcing this noise bylaw that we're trying to create. I know that she's had some requests because of Ken's. I look at this noise bylaw as something that addresses any type of noise that is intrusive to our residents and that could be causing health issues. And I know that Ken's has been an issue, and I know that it went to the planning board this week. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I'm wondering if maybe Heather can comment on what her thoughts are around this noise bylaw, and if maybe there's something existing that she's doing with these Ken's issues, with Ken's issue, because I'm afraid that we have so many empty buildings on Route 9 that may be turned into warehouses, and they're just so close to our residents that we're going to end up with even more noise complaints because they've decided to give them permits to do that work, and no one's paying attention to the amount of noise or even the hours that they're conducting their business.
Okay. Cindy, you have your hand up?
First of all, I just want to remind people that somewhere along the line, the building inspector was reached out to, and I know that my brother's the assessor. He works very closely with the building inspector. In pure and simple, the building inspector does not have time to enforce a noise bylaw. She was real clear on that, very clear. As far as I guess, and I'm jumping ahead a little, there's a section in definitions called noise pollution. And to Lisa's questions about the Ken situation, because you're right, there's a ton of empty space on Route 9 that backs up to residential areas. And where is that going to go to? But if you look at the page that says the definition that says noise pollution, it talks about the amount of time necessary to cause one or more of the following effects. And one is temporary, it's supposed to say, or I think permanent, temporary or permanent hearing loss in people exposed. 2 is injury or tendency to injure. Then it gets into nuisance, interference with the comfortable and reasonable enjoyment of life and property, and exceeding the limits or restrictions. I'm not sure that we can really address all 5 things. And I'm sort of thinking that the conversations we've had are more addressing number 3, number 4, and number 5. Not to say that things that fall under 1 and 2, like the Ken's thing, it sure needs to be addressed. But in what we're trying to accomplish right now in this first pass bylaw, I don't see how all those pieces can be addressed.
Tim?
We're kind of going slightly sideways with how we're talking about this. To be a little bit more focused about getting to agreed to sections, I don't think we need to solve who enforces it tonight. I think we can say we agree that the authority section needs to be in this draft, and we need to get legal counsel's opinion of town on how it would write, who's responsible primarily and who's secondarily responsible. we don't need to solve this right now. What we need to solve right now is saying that we agree that there's an authority section and this area needs more work. And then we can move on to the next section and say, do we think that this should be here? Do we think this should be here? Otherwise, we're going to be here all night and not get anywhere again.
Right.
So I would like to have at the end of this meeting an agreed to outline of what sections we're going to have included, and we can work on the content of those sections either individually and bring it back as a homework assignment, or we can do another live sculpting section of maybe 2 or 3 of these sections at our next meeting, and then 2 or 3, assuming we only land with a handful of sections. So
Okay.
I would like to say, I agree that there should be an authority section. I don't agree with what words this says today. And I would like to say that an authority section should be in the outline.
Okay.
Great.
I want to make sure everybody's heard. Lee, you have your hand up?
Yep. So my feeling, well, first of all, I'm like moot on whether or not we even need an authority section. While you were talking, I was looking through our town's bylaws, and most of the bylaws that I looked at do not contain an authority section. The planning board is an exception to that. It does say that basically they have the authority, but a number of the other sections really didn't have a specific authority section. So I think it's up to us whether we want to include it. If we didn't have a section 1 that said authority, we could certainly just when we get to the individual sections for who is going to do what, we would specify them as the authority. So, for example, you might make a complaint to, the police. The enforcement might come from the police would come to measure it, but the Board of Health might be the one who actually issues the citation. Whatever we, and I'm not suggesting that's what we're going to do, but whatever we see, whatever we decided could end up being in that section if we didn't want to have an authority section. And it might be cleaner to do it that way rather than, sort of this global, because once it gets passed by town meeting, it has the authority.
Mhm.
Right. Heather, I see you have a hand up. Or,
Just right. I don't think we want to go too sideways on Ken's. It's a specific industrial, and that, currently looking at either Ken's working as a good neighbor, to help the noise complaints, or to meet those very specific DEP criteria, which would be something we in the state would enforce, and that's a pure tone or like 10 decibels above ambient. But those are tricky to cover, to measure, to have the data to measure them. But anyway, so I think that when I looked at the survey that Noise Committee sent out, there wasn't really questions about industrial, but some wrote it in as a comment, but it wasn't one of the sort of sections.
Yeah,
to
we
write.
did.
But I did notice that some residents did bring it in to the free text on the industrial noise. So anyway, I don't want to go too much off on that. And then, my understanding, but you guys have looked at more bylaws. Some towns and cities passed it more as a policy, and there's different amendments that if they were to cite authority that are, I think Worcester passed it as from the city council. And some towns pass it. If you pass it through Board of Health, like Board of Health just passed this mass mandate, it's the MGL and it's the regulations, like the Board of Health has authority to bring regulation to something which is a public health nuisance. But I could be wrong, but I thought a good amount of these towns or cities are passing it more through their, like Worcester did, passed it through. And I thought the origin of where we are now, Lisa had said about the select board and Sam Stivers and bringing this to this. So I would just, I guess, I can discuss with select board about what role they kind of see in terms of bringing this forward, but it certainly didn't originate from Board of Health. So I thought that perhaps Certainly select board is involved. So I didn't know if they want to do in consultation with us or be sort of the agent of record on it. And then, yep, I think.
Okay, well, two things. I mean, obviously the selectmen want us to do what we're doing, so they told us what to do, so I guess that's their answer. And a lot of times laws are passed at the state level and they have to be adopted locally. Like, the Quinville, for instance, is a state law, but it has to be accepted at town meeting for it to take effect in the town. So a lot of times there are things like, I'm not saying this is one, but that is sometimes the avenue that how it happens in states. But I think it would be fair to say that this section needs a little work. So I wouldn't say it's eliminated, but I wouldn't say it's accepted. So Tim, if you want to make a note that, we need a little bit further, how about further discussion at a later date? Maybe if we go down the document further, maybe we'll get some answers on where we stand on that.
If I
Right, I mean, that's my understanding. This isn't being brought forward by a Board of Health regulation. This is being brought forward by select
Right.
board.
We're just using that as a framework right now because it was brought up and certainly reasonable. And we're just going to make some notes and see where we go with it.
if I do it this way, where I say authority and enforcement section, maybe at the end of this, we can decide if I clean it up in a different way. But if we say authority and authority/enforcement section is what we agree we should have. And then I just cross out the text.
Well, I don't think we agreed really on anything other than that it needs work.
Well, this is what I'm saying. We're agreeing that there should be a section like this, but I put a cross through the words that are here, so we're not agreeing
no.
with the words.
I'm certainly not in agreement to that, and I think I heard some opposition to that as well amongst the committee. So
I would probably have enforcement being its own section, but authority could, I was neutral on that.
Okay, so what's the best way here, guys? So that way we can actually get to an agreement on what we would break down. I'm okay with enforcement by itself. Like authority and enforcement to me have enough similarities that unless the lawyer tells me that they're different, I'm looking at it as the same thing. So I don't know how
I think that's, okay, sorry. I think that's an important section too, because when people are, feel that a noise is intrusive, they need to know who they have to reach out to have it evaluated. And what are the, someone can come out and mediate, and what's the next process? And what if they decide, once, if they continue to create that noise and it is intrusive, who do you reach out to? So I think that's a very important part of this, and I think it should be upfront so people know who to go to if they have an issue.
So
let me add something quickly. So overall, I think everybody agrees there's something here. It's what we call it. Chief Paulus called it duties and responsibilities of department and agencies. This document had authority. We're talking about enforcement section. From my point of view, section 1, we need something. We don't know what it's called. Let's move on to something else. Like we have to deal with the details and the title, but overall we need something there, whether we call it enforcement or the way Chief Paulus described it in his document. But overall we need something,
right,
to guide our citizens, and then we move on to purpose. Otherwise, we're going to be here until.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I just want us to agree on what this, like, we don't have a title for it, but we agree that the section in yellow covers the context of what we're thinking. So
Yeah.
we can move on and say that this section would remain, this would go away, and or be rewritten however seen fit.
Sure.
General consensus for that, right?
So authority to me means where we got the right to write this bylaw. So the one that's there says it came from the Board of Health under its authority by Massachusetts general laws. Ours would more or less say, if we were following the parallel for that, we get our authority through the town meeting,
No, no.
which, well,
You
but
don't even
if you
have to
think
go
about what
into it.
authority says, I mean, it gets passed by town meeting and that makes it a town bylaw. Where, so, I look at, and if you look at some of the other bylaws in it, it's, you know, who has the authority to make this regulation? So Heather said, you know, the Board of Health has the authority to make certain regulations without having to go through town meeting. So the question is, where did we get our authority? In that sense, this is, we could just totally start with section 2, the purpose. And we would still need another section further down for enforcement. And we need another section for duties and responsibilities potentially. But authority to me is where we get the right to say what we're, to create this in the first place, not who you go to.
But Lee, you bring up a good point. If you notice in the title, it says regulation, and our title is going to say noise bylaw. And I think
Right.
by saying a bylaw, it means it's been approved at town meeting. It's
Exactly.
a civil, it's already says it in the title. Where a regulation, you need to know where the regulation comes from and who enforces. There's questions when you say a regulation. So that's
Yes.
why they have that section. I'm fine with just bypassing it right now. We'll work on it later
Yep.
when we get some more work done, hopefully.
And many of the other regulations, or bylaws in our compendium online start with purpose.
So can we call this enforcement and move on? And say like
Agreed.
location TBD?
Yep.
I like
Yeah,
that.
Except it probably shouldn't be the first thing.
Yeah, so the
That's the only-
location within the section is TBD, but I think we're all saying
Okay.
something similar, that it's enforcement. We're looking for the enforcement aspect of what this brings forward.
So can we change the section 1 to section question mark and just leave it there as a placeholder? Take
Yeah.
out the
Yeah.
authority?
Yeah, I'm
Just-
good with that.
Well,
Purpose probably should be first.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's agreed right there, but can we call this enforcement and just put it someplace else?
Yes, in my mind.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think that has consensus.
Yep.
Okay. And then for this purpose of what we're doing now, should I delete this?
I think
Yes.
you should just leave it
Yes.
stricken and not
Yeah.
delete it.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfectly fine. Okay, section 2, purpose.
Should be section 1.
How about we not number them because they might get moved around?
Right,
How
yeah.
about we just have a purpose section?
Yeah, how about I
Okay.
just delete all the numbers so we don't have this conversation during this entire meeting,
Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
you guys? And we just have sections and they get numbered when we're done.
okay.
Sorry, guys.
Just like my pages.
Yeah, we're just not getting anywhere. So I just want us to move forward.
know.
with a number. Okay, no numbers now. So section, purpose.
Yes, we need something.
I don't even know if we need this myself. I don't think that the purpose is necessary inside the bylaw. I think it takes up page space for no legitimate reason.
Okay, so,
Doesn't it kind of define the bylaw?
So
not-
Well,
if you're looking at other bylaws in the town, you probably, for the most part, don't need to put a purpose in there. Because if you're looking at what you're going to talk about in debating it at town meeting, that would be different. Because you need to be able to give an explanation. But whether that purpose needs to be part of the bylaw, it probably doesn't actually need to be part of the bylaw, because it's really, if you look at everything, for example, in this example, for example, it's just commentary, really.
so a lot of times that section's put into regulations and actually policies that to help fill in between the cracks, some particular things that aren't addressed. You refer back to the purpose, the overall purpose of the policy or the regulation, where a bylaw, that's the discretion is going to be left with the person that enforces it. So I would certainly be in agreement that I don't think that section is necessary at all. I think it's, common sense will prevail. But that's just my 2 cents. Who's next? Anybody else have a comment on the purpose section? Oh, Lisa?
Instead of purpose, maybe you call it scope. That's, I think, what's the scope of the issue? Why are we creating this bylaw? Because there are serious hazards due to noise. And so we need to come up with ways to provide for peace and quiet and time for rest and relaxation and not being bombarded with noise.
My
So we can
personal-
abate that noise.
My personal opinion is you leave it in there. If you're going to start handing people $100 tickets on up and they want to go review the bylaw, they kind of got to have some kind of background of how it came to be.
Thank you.
Okay. Cindy?
I kind of like the second paragraph with a couple of probably changes, but I think that there should be, typically when you put a law or a rule or whatever in place, there's a purpose, so people know what you're trying to address. And I think that the whole first paragraph could go, but the second paragraph I think has some merit. I think that with a little bit of wordsmithing, we could have like a very, like a 1 sentence or 2 sentence, here's why this is here. My opinion.
Okay. John?
I would keep it and I would take Chief Paulus's first paragraph, which was a very high level reason for his bylaw, which had a scope. But in essence, I would keep it and move on to discuss whether we need definitions. And we're not discussing the details. It's just whether we should have the section or not. So for the section, yes. Whether we call it scope or something else, that's immaterial right now to me.
Okay, Lee?
Having listened to the chief just now, part of my thought was that if, in fact, having a section like this would be helpful for the people who had to enforce it, then that would be in and of itself a useful reason for having it. So given that, I would probably support keeping something in here. And maybe what Cindy was saying would be a reasonable idea, or what was in consider whatever in the chief's original one that I don't have in front of me.
Actually, yeah, the chief's, I just looked at the chief's scope.
It's very nice, isn't it?
And it's, I think it's great, actually.
So will we keep that section and can we move on?
It's at the, Tim, it's at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, that first paragraph.
Okay, we don't
And I
have to
don't think we need B and all that, because I would assume we're gonna have an exceptions.
Okay. If we go back to this, are we agreeing on it's called scope versus purpose? And we want to keep that section.
Yeah, yes, for
we
me.
need to have a definition.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I was just gonna say, I saw you put up the first sheet on that old one, and I was just really amazed that it's almost 5 years ago. We've been talking
Time
about this for
flies.
quite a while.
okay, so we agree on scope and we're good on the section, but not the words here. Good on saying we need a scope section to keep moving forward.
I actually like that first paragraph. I think it drives home the importance of, why this is an issue and that it is a public health issue too.
Lisa,
The
the
first
paragraph
paragraph
on
of-
the Board of Health one, or they're on the chief's
The
one?
one that's here, yeah, the one that's on the template.
Okay,
And I think if we decide to determine if the Board of Health is on board with part of the enforcement of this, I would think that they might want to have that statement there too. So I don't know.
So I'm in agreement with calling this scope, and then we can come back later on what stays and goes if we're okay with it as a team.
Sounds good.
okay.
Okay, next section is called definitions.
I think we need definitions. I think that's pretty standard.
Yep, you do need definitions for sure.
I don't think that we need to debate this at all. I think that the ones that are in this listed are up for discussion. So I'm just going to simply cross them out because of that. But as for the section, I think we need the section.
Yeah, and then we'll just keep the ones we need.
Okay, so then it looks like this. We're going to have a definition section. Keep moving forward. The next section is called measurement of noise levels. So Pete, I think we should try to just hit everybody on your screen for a quick comment about this.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep a tally that so everybody gets a turn. Lisa, what's your thought on the measurement noise level section?
I think we should leave this section here and have a discussion around how to enforce it and maybe to get more feedback in our next public forum around noise bylaw measurement.
Okay, John?
I'm going to be very simple. This is about enforcement. I would defer to our officers who are already overburdened dealing with more and more stuff every year, whether this is helpful for them in any way or it's just more chaos. From my point of view, measurement is a scientific, which requires a professional to really do it correctly. And I don't know if there's any benefit. I would not put it in, but I would be deferred to our police officers and enforcement people, whether that helps them in any way.
Okay, Cindy?
I completely agree with what John just said.
Okay. I'm next. I would agree as well. And especially with my experience that just whatever little experience I did, I think it did actually the opposite of what we were intending, based on, my experience. Things that I thought were allowed were not, and things that I thought were violations were the opposite. But anyway, so I would be against the measuring as well. So I'll put a no for that. Lee?
I'm going to concur with that. I mean, it just, the neuroacoustics or psychoacoustics, whatever the right term is for how one perceives noise compared to how one, what the measurements are. I just don't correlate to what's annoying to people. And I would much prefer to defer to the chief and his group if to figure out what they think that they can enforce.
You said that much more eloquently than I, but that's exactly what I was trying to say. And Tim?
I think it complicates the nature of actually getting something done here, and it makes it unnecessarily longer than it needs to be. I would be in favor of not including this in the first pass through all this. And if the police seem like they need the enforcement, as this would be adopted in execution in town, then a revision to a future town meeting would be where I would stand on it. So I'm in favor of striking this section and anything to do with decibels throughout the entire document.
Okay. So just in my brief
Chief still
tally.
with us?
What was it? Lisa, you had your hand up?
I was just curious if we were to take out the measurements, I'm just curious if in regards to industrial noise, if we can put something in this bylaw that will let people know that there is a certain measurement that maybe the Board of Health is responsible for, so that they understand that there is some type of regulation that's happening around industrial noise. I don't know if Heather can answer if there's something that she's working off of. I think she might be working off the DEP 10 decibels above ambient, but I do know that Ken's has been doing did do a noise study from that information that was sent out to us. So I'm wondering if there's some way that we can get something in there. And if there is a 10 decibel above ambient issue, that means someone has to be measuring that for people that are complaining about industrial noise. And if it's just specific to industrial noise, maybe I would like to see that in the bylaw for our residents who are dealing with those issues and could potentially deal with them in other locations within our town.
Okay.
If we boil that down into what we're saying and what we're trying to accomplish here, that would mean we would want to include an industrial section, and we can figure out exactly what that says later. But we would want to include an industrial section, not necessarily a measurement of noise levels. And we would include, because the industrial section would cover the specifics of that more nuance.
Yeah.
Because
I definitely recognize that there's a problem. And I mean, you got the planning board, the building department, the Board of Health, you got groups of professionals, and to have this, I don't think we could address it with the bylaw properly without, I just don't think it would be fair on both sides to address it in this bylaw, to be fair to both sides.
Well, it sounds like there might be something that exists. It's just a matter of having it in the noise bylaw and letting those departments know that there is a regulation that needs to be followed.
Oh, I'm sure that they all know their own the regulations that pertain to their duties, and I think it would be up to them to bring those forward.
But this is a place for our citizens to find this information too. It's also letting them know that they have rights around this information, that they have the right to make a complaint and who to complain to and what are the regulations, and how can they have someone come out and evaluate it for them.
So if I can, and I'm just trying to help us move. So if this isn't the right thing, then we can strike this whole thing. I would just put a note here that says industrial noise as a section. And then we would say something like DEP regulations as a note for it, the same way we talked before, because this might be a way that we could get around some of this, because the DEP regulations are what has that 10 dB above ambient, and they maintain building code about what HVAC systems and stuff like that are.
Yep.
That might be
that's good. Maybe you just put something there about Board of Health regulation too, or something like that. Maybe that's what they go by. Or Board of Health.
And that could just be its own thing, and we can define that later. We don't have to worry about defining it now, but the greater document would not have decibels as a measurement. It would only apply to this one section, and we'd have to then define that section later as an effort.
Thank you.
I'm
So,
worried we're starting to overreach the whole purpose of a simple bylaw that we can get our citizens to pass. The more we add to it, even if it's the right thing to do, I'd rather do something smaller and get it passed with some probability than overreach.
Yep. So,
So that's the
But
only
I
thing I'm
think
worried
we can
about.
bring this to public hearing again, and if we can easily take that section out if we need to.
That's fine.
so John, not to solve the problem, not to solve everything. All I'm thinking right here is keep it simple.
Yeah, yeah.
Is this section would reference that that DEP regulation I said before about that we had a good point. We may not want to reference it for the bigger document in case the definitions change. This might be that minor section where it still stays simple, but it just simply says that a building complies to the HVAC and other requirements that the DEP already has in place.
Yeah, I think it's important to give people that information so they know that we looked at it and there is already something much bigger than our town bylaw where they can go with those problems.
Yeah.
So
So
if we can,
summary, there was so I got 5 no and 1 yes on the measurement. Is that fair to say?
Mhm.
So the section measurement of noise level, we're gonna strike that, and I guess we're gonna possibly revisit it under industrial noise. Is that my understanding?
I think that's accurate. Yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
it would be more specialized under one section. Is what we were kind of discussing. So I crossed this out. So we wouldn't have the measurement in the final thing, but it would fall some level underneath industrial.
Yeah.
Then we would move on to noise thresholds. And I would say I don't think that noise threshold is right. So I would say strike this section, but add a section that's days and time in its place.
Mm.
So didn't we kind of redo that already with the times?
Yeah, that's that we would
Yeah,
just.
but we haven't put it anywhere.
It's not actually, it's not placed inside this document. So I would put here, and again, these can get all rearranged, day and time, hours. And then this
yeah, I
section,
support that.
Yeah.
this section would go away, which would also get rid of the zoning districts, the tables, everything that was. Well, we can
Nope,
discuss.
you went
that.
too far. You went
Wait,
too far.
you're too far, yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
yeah, right there.
there you go.
Good catch. This doesn't have a number. Okay, so that would cross out this section for now. We can come back and add things back in, but the real crux will be the day and time hours is a section we
Yep.
would add.
And then,
Yep.
you know what, once we agree on the sections, then that tells us what definitions, if any, need to be there.
Exactly. We start to actually build something back versus.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we agreed to this. Clear, right? No, nobody's saying no.
Everybody in agreement with that? Any opposition?
Great.
And then
Okay.
we have, the next section would be prohibited activities.
I think we need that section. And I'm going to, and I'll tell you, I have an idea. Since we've decided not to do decibels on this, and I know that we've gotten a lot of feedback on leaf blowers, I think we should consider, I think there's a couple of things that we need to consider around leaf blowers and the amount of equipment used by contractors at the same time. So maybe with leaf blowers, we say you can do spring cleanup and do some months. And then in the fall, you can do some months around leaf blowers, but they can't be used year round. So there's timeframes for leaf blowers. And I think we need to put in something around the number of pieces of equipment that are used by a contractor on a lawn. I mean, we had people that have said, they've got 5 things going at the same time. Since we're not going to go out and measure decibel levels. So that's why I think we should have a prohibited activities section on this.
Can you
Okay,
explain how
Tim?
that would work with our hours?
So you could have hours for contractors, but there's a little caveat that says leaf blowers are only permitted from, and we can come up with what months, what's the start time, what's the end time, and so it could be from, maybe we need to reach out to contractors to find out when they start going out to do spring cleanup, getting the residual trees, leaves off of the lawns. But so maybe let's say it's April to June 1st, and then they can bring their leaf blowers back out from October to December 1st. So all leaf cleanup needs to be done within that time. And then that will prevent contractors from using leaf blowers to blow grass clippings, when they really don't need to be blown off the grass. It's a great place for the grass clippings to be.
At least I understand what you're
It's
saying, but
fertilizer. So
50% of our citizens are going to resist anything that even thinks of impeding on their rights.
but they can still have their lawns mowed.
There'll be
And then
green.
the contractors will just have to use a broom
No, that's not going to work.
and reduce the noise level.
Lisa, there's a couple of levels of blowers, okay, for different reasons. Typically
Yeah,
during
yeah, I
spring
know.
and fall
Yep.
cleanup,
Yep.
they use the big hurricane blowers,
Right.
okay?
Yep. And they're
in
very high
conjunction-
decibel levels.
Okay. In conjunction with the backpack blowers. When you're talking spring and fall cleanup, right? They use those, a combination of those, they line up the backpack people, they've got the hurricane blower going. And the noise is pretty intense for a fairly short amount of time, okay? If you say, oh, you can only have one hurricane blower and one leaf blower, they're gonna be there for hours. And oh, by the way, the person paying them is gonna be paying them for hours, and that is not gonna go over well. The second piece is outside of spring and fall cleanups. You've got the backpack blowers are typically used to blow off the sidewalks and the driveways. Again, the alternative is to broom them off by hand. It takes forever. People aren't gonna pay those prices. They're gonna have a fit.
But there's people that are complaining about that noise.
Can I make a point of order? We are in the middle of what we said we weren't going to do right now, which was doing all this stuff. I think we just need to generally agree if there should be a prohibited activities section, and then we can take care of filling in the content of that section later. And what follows this is an exemption section. So there might be a balance between what's prohibited and what could be exempted to solve both issues. Where homeowners and all that, and I don't want to get in the middle of solving it. I'm pointing out the idea that if we keep this section as a prohibited activities section, Lisa had a good point of what could be considered in this section. There could be other things that are already listed here, like truck idling, horns, engines, brakes, stuff like that could be in here. So at the end of the day, we need to decide, should this section be here? And then we could decide what content fills that section.
How much longer is the section than what you have pictured there?
There's recreational vehicles and motor vehicles, and then it gets into like a table, and then that section's kind of done. So the way it's written anyways, that's what's there.
Almost, when I reviewed the document, almost all that stuff, horns, idling, all that stuff was addressed by the motor vehicle laws, most of it. The only thing that wasn't was trash collection and outdoor music. You're not supposed to toot your horn, obviously, excessively. Truck idling for over 5 minutes, that's a Chapter 90 violation. I mean, you might want to have a section, but a lot of that is already addressed.
So
Of course, music isn't, but I don't know what's further down than what you have. Recreational vehicles. There are laws on recreational motor vehicles.
But I
And motor
think-
vehicles is the same, that's all Chapter 90.
So if I can start off a brief around Robin. That's
Yep.
a lot. I think this section has a good opportunity to remain. I don't know if I necessarily agree with what things are listed here, but I could see a good point of items like maybe the Massachusetts motor vehicle law reference code here. Some basic, real simple things like that. Lisa's ideas could find a way to be sculpted to win me over in some kind of potential way. But I think that stuff does have a place in this, and I would be in favor of keeping this section for now.
All right. We want to take a vote on that, or how do you want to? I was trying to keep a tally, but we kind of went sideways on it. But Lisa, I have you down that you want to keep it.
Yep.
John, I have you down as no, but is that correct?
No, there are potential reasons to keep it. I was trying to keep everything simpler.
Right.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, so I'll put you down as yes then. I think we went sideways a little bit with the leaf blower when that popped up. Cindy, I have you down as no, is that correct?
No, I can live with it, but can we strike all the verbiage that's there? Yeah, to be consistent with what we're doing.
Yep.
Okay. I'll do a no. Lee, what's your thought?
I think we should keep the section, and I'll just add my leaf blower concept that, when people come in and they do, my contractor does 3 houses on my area, and they bring a big crew, and they're out of there in like an hour and a half with the noise, and then they settle down to the quiet stuff. I'd much rather have them get it over quickly. But
And Tim?
I'm in favor of keeping this section.
Okay.
being able to reference the Mass General laws is consistent with what you see in other town bylaws.
Mhm.
Peter,
So we
can I
would
have a-
just have to identify the things that we wanted to include and reference the appropriate bylaw.
All right, next section.
Chief
think
Paulus
Chief
want to
is
say
next.
something?
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments. I'd be in favor of leaving it, even if we made it really simple and just did days and times. There are going to be extenuating circumstances that come up. I can look down right now and just see outdoor music and think of some of the calls that we go to involving, people that have a pool or teenagers home, things like that. So there are certain aspects that need to be regulated even during the day hours. And I think back, the technology is always emerging. 5 years ago, when I worked on this, or my previous experience working in a very compact city, nobody ever even talked about landscaping equipment and leaf blowers. That wasn't even in the conversation. So technology has advanced, and I think the electric switch, I don't know how many years it'll take, but that'll help out. But even from an enforcement prospect, we're having this discussion. The wording is going to have to be worked on. So picture the police officer working on a Saturday, and he's got 5 calls to respond to of landscaping crews with more than 2 leaf blower backpacks going. It's just something that we don't want to get involved as little as possible in these type of things. We're really regulating neighbor problems, neighbor annoyances, I should say.
There might be an easy way to do it, because if we are not doing decibel levels, and we can send off a picture of 5 pieces of equipment on the 1 acre lot. Or maybe more so on a 10 acre lot, but 5 acre lot, whatever. I mean, you could at least take that information, and it's really not going to be it probably won't go back to the landscaper. It's going to go back to the neighbor to say, lower the noise, because they're the ones that will be they're the ones that the enforcement has to go through.
So
Isn't-
you're
Well,
So
I don't think
it's the homeowner that's going to be fined. It's not going to be the
No,
contractor.
no.
No, it's the
Mhm.
contractor.
It'll be the contractor.
In the other town bylaws, it's the contractor.
It's
I
whoever's
think
doing
there's
it.
some that
It's
say that
whoever's doing it.
it's the people who own the house too. I don't know.
No.
What are your thoughts on that, Chief Paulus?
Yeah, it would be the person that's generating the noise. So the person's on vacation at the Cape and their landscaping crew comes in, they're not going to come home to a noise ticket in their mailbox. I wouldn't even bring that to court. You'd have to have some, it's just not set up that way.
So I was just curious because I think I've read some bylaws that it's actually the homeowner who's responsible for making sure that their contractors, and obviously that's not the case when it comes to building. There's just so many ways to approach this.
My experience would be on that, loud parties. So you'd go to a loud party with the music blaring. You've been there 2 or 3 times. We would look to cite the homeowner to solve the problem,
Yeah.
right there. But I mean, you're talking about a real different situation. I don't know how many landscape crews, how many workers, are they educated on this? Who's the foreman? It gets really technical.
So would you end up going to the homeowner to say, you need to let your crew know that they can't come in until 8 a.m. on Saturday or something?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of growing pains at first. And
Yep.
like I said, we really managed to work with people and neighbors, and 99.9% of the time we're successful. And I think that's why we're here. That we have this 0.1% of the time where there needs to be some type of an ordinance, and there needs to have some backup of a penalty and problems that you can't solve. I'm in total agreement with that.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're putting this out as a bylaw and we get enough hype, the homeowners will recognize that this is, contractors can't come out until a certain time. And obviously when it comes to builders, that's a different story because they usually own their land that they're building on. So someone else will have to maybe do the enforcement on that. Or like you said, you'll hand it off to someone, but maybe we need to figure out how to get the building commissioner on board to help with the enforcement if it's not going to come through the police.
And to tell you the truth, the problem since I've been here, either in your area or Oregon Ave or some other spot, it all goes back to the building commissioner. We'll write the reports and, we'll forward it, to the building commissioner. So, I mean, they will be isolated, but we need our partners in the town to help us out with this.
Okay. Sorry, we went off track again.
Next section.
is exemptions. I think that this is a no-brainer. We don't need to spend any time debating it.
Yep,
There has
we
to
need
be some
them.
level of exemptions. But I will cross this off for consistency, and we can
Mhm.
plug in what's appropriate later.
Okay.
And then the next section is waivers.
Now, if I remember in a previous discussion, we had, the comment was made that if we put in, waivers as a section, that will basically gut the entire regulation. So I don't know how that will play into it, but that certainly would be, you know, the crux of whether or not we want to keep a section on waivers.
I would eliminate it, and during the exemptions, we could have conditions where somebody could actually get a permit to do something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
I'm in favor of that, of John's approach.
Yeah, because if
Okay.
somebody really had a reason why they needed to do something, they could always, you know, go to the appropriate commission to get permission to do it, even if it wasn't built into the rest of this.
I think if I recall, my earlier version, I think it might have been through the Board of Selectmen. So you get things like the Chestnut Hill Farm events or St. Mark's graduation reunion weekend. I mean, you can go through all kinds of different scenarios, but I believe I'd have to look at it again. It was an appeal process or a permit process through the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I'd leave it for that.
and I know that we talked about, you know, notification of the neighbors. Like if you did do something for the selectmen, at least it would be in the public forum that there's something up and coming in your, you know, in your neighborhood. You'd be kind of on notice that it was happening, rather than just the night before or the night of. But yeah, I would say no on that as well. I didn't hear from Cindy.
Yeah, I'm a no.
You're a no.
I'm a
We
no.
don't need it.
And Lisa, what are you?
No.
You're a no? Okay. So no, everybody's a no on that. Hey,
Woo.
So can we just take that one out?
I guess, yeah, we could address it under exemption maybe for,
No, I mean, if you guys are okay with me deleting things, I'm okay with it. I don't think I've done that for anything yet, flat out.
why
We'll just
don't-
leave it this way.
just
for
put
now.
in comma next to waivers, say delete in entirety,
Well, it's
quotation,
Yeah.
and
it's
parentheses.
crossed out. So I mean, unless
Yeah.
we misread this later, but it's actually crossed out.
Mhm.
Other ones are left in for what we're keeping.
Isn't everything else crossed out too?
Only the
No, only the text.
only
Okay.
the content of the section. The ones that we're keeping, we
Okay,
kept the name.
Okay.
At the end, I'm going to rearrange these as a more consolidated
okay.
sections that we did.
So the last section is,
There's two more. There's violations and penalties.
Seems like there needs to be something there, doesn't there?
Yeah, we definitely need that.
Yep.
so
Agree.
That's the teeth.
that part of this is gonna be who is gonna enforce it, so, you know, obviously it says here Board of Health.
We do have another section that's called enforcement. So they could get combined, but my vote would be penalties. And then we have the enforcement section separate from that
Hmm,
for simplicity's sake.
Yep,
yep.
So,
Yeah. Doesn't matter to me. That's
Yeah,
fine.
it's fine.
so I'm going to cross through just that, and we're going to keep penalties. So if we're in agreement,
yep,
So why are we taking are we separating it out?
well,
no,
Why-
we
So
would
why are we
have-
taking violations out? I'm sorry.
Because violations would be a part of enforcement.
Okay, so we're just saying what the penalty will be.
right, it's just renaming that section enforcement. And,
Okay.
I had a little bit of a concern on the penalty one. I think if you scroll down a little, I thought the third offense, the highest it could be was 300, but I'd have to check with the court. Maybe the chief knows, but can a third offense be 500?
Is that I think that's Mass General Law, right?
And the chief's proposal was $300.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think a bylaw, the highest it can be is 300, so that would have to be,
I'm not sure. I know the marijuana goes up to 500. So, but I mean, we don't have to get too, I think $300 as a maximum would send the message.
Yeah.
If you're still having a problem after that, then,
So let's not cross out the words on that one. Let's change the 500 to 300 and we'll have one section at least done.
Well, we're gonna change it to the Board of Health. If the Board of Health determines about,
Well, that part we can cross out for right
Right.
now.
just say, yeah, just cross out, just say if a violation,
You could put if the enforcement agent.
right?
Chief, I'm just curious, with penalties of $500, do you get a lot of people that say, nope, I'm not paying it, I want to go to court over it?
We've actually gotten very few of those. It's kind of been determined that it's a civil penalty and the court doesn't enforce it. And I've seen some towns wait till they get a significant number of them and bring them all as a civil action. But I'll be honest with you, the district court isn't enforcing a lot of bylaw penalties. The person will show up, they'll dismiss it. And that goes with, a lot of the traffic offenses that we write. They show up for hearing and a vast majority of them get dismissed.
Do they?
They do.
So just a note, I don't know if there's another way of creating penalties other than, these Mass General Law, the fines, but maybe we should think about that. Especially if we have other departments involved. If it's a building department issue, maybe it's a matter of revoking permits to the builders.
So
I think the noise bylaw would be a tool in their toolbox. So
Right.
if they have other avenues, that's great for enforcement. But I think including in this just gives them another tool to work with.
Yeah.
Chief, I have a question. Do contractors need a license to practice in Southborough? Like, for example, a contractor, do they need a license to operate?
No,
Okay.
So this section we said was done, but I feel like there's still opportunities here. So
Yep.
for sake of what we've done, I'm just going to cross it out. I did change some things because I thought it was changeable, but we still have differences. So this is updated, but not, I changed regulation to bylaw and the final fine to $300 from the 500. So I tried to get it there, but I don't think we're there.
I guess if you feel strongly, you could actually make a third offense a crime and make it criminal, make it arrestable. I mean, you could do really whatever you wanted.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. But I was thinking that if they
I
had
wouldn't either,
a,
but it is an option.
right, if they had needed a license to practice, we could have revoked their license to operate in the town. That would have potential real teeth.
Right.
If there's a desire to now from the group, the way I was reading this was penalties was going to be a simpler section and not necessarily defining what a violation is and what the process is. If the group feels that that should remain, then I would say this should still say violations and penalties.
Why don't we leave it and we can think about it? Maybe we should go back and look at other laws specifically, bylaws specifically around how they handle violations and penalties.
Mhm.
So I'm going to leave violations and penalties now. We can always refine that later, but it seems appropriate still versus what I initially thought. And then severability. That's the next section.
I get lost in that, huh?
So,
It's a legal speak to me, so I
Yeah.
don't know what the legitimate purpose of keeping this in from a legal standpoint is, but from a first pass reading through it, it's a confusing addition.
right. I've dealt with this in a number of other, like contracts and bylaws and things. And the issue really is that, if you've got one clause that gets, struck as, like illegal or unconstitutional or whatever, it doesn't affect the rest of the contract or the law that was under consideration.
Oh, is that what they're trying to
Gotcha.
say? Okay.
But,
You
for
go.
the purposes of this, the whole thing needs to hang together.
Right.
And if you got rid of, say you got rid of the section on fines, then what would be the point? So my feeling is we don't need the section on severability, because if the bylaw got struck down by the courts as not being, done legally, then I think, we need to go and create a new bylaw. So I'd take away.
I'm with Lee on that one as a no.
I'm looking at the draft from Chief, and there is a section on severability, consistency, and repealer. So I think we should keep it so that whoever we decide has authority or enforcement will follow through too.
Tim, can
It
you
must be-
project that section?
It must be some type of legal standard. I'm going over union contracts for negotiation right
Mhm.
now, and they all have some type of
Right.
wording like that in them.
Yeah.
That's true of all contracts. I don't think I've seen a contract for like employment or anything that doesn't have, a severability, so that, say it had a section saying that you couldn't set up a shop across the street, a non-compete clause. And that subsequently got struck down because the state changed the law and made non-competes illegal. The rest of the contract would remain in force. I mean, that's the idea behind having that. But in this noise bylaw, I'm not sure why we need it.
Yeah, I'm with Lee. I mean, this is a very simple, focused bylaw. Any section would basically make it basically fall apart. So for simplicity, I would eliminate it.
Cindy, what's your
I
thoughts?
think that anything the selectmen put in, I believe they have town council review. And so if this is needed, I think they'll put it in.
So
I guess I'm saying, I don't think we really need it at this point.
okay.
Yeah.
Tim?
I say strike it. I want to say, like, just preemptively ask town council now just to no, but I don't really know what the full process is, but I don't think it would hurt to send the select boards, specifically Sam Stivers, a message and say, can we run this by council and find out if we need this section or not?
I mean, I think that's on them. I mean, and ultimately it goes to the Attorney General for approval, so.
Okay, so
I think there's 5 no's and a yes, so,
I'm in favor of striking it then.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it may relive, but
Yeah, if the
Why
lawyers
would we
tell us
just
we
leave
need
it
it-
in and ask the Board of Selectmen or Town Council if it's needed? Because it's it's part of a bylaw.
It's an anchoring effect, Lisa. If you put it in, it's less likely to come out. If you don't put it in, then it's less likely to come in.
right. They're gonna have enough to do and to,
Yeah, I guess to answer your question, Lisa, in my perspective, if town council needs it, they're at it back. If we got rid of it for no reason, then we just simplified the look of this thing. Or if we got rid of it and it's not needed, then we simplified the look of this thing and we didn't lose anything.
But
Right.
what if they're not sure about how to write this bylaw? What if we say it's in all other town bylaws for noise? Why wouldn't we leave it there? Because they're probably just looking through it and they may not even be thinking anything about it. And then we don't put it in there and it just cancels everything out. And then we don't have a noise bylaw in the end.
I don't know if I know enough to answer that, but my knowledge of the process would be it gets reviewed by town council. It goes to town meeting, the town approves or denies it, and then it goes to the AG for review. So once somebody along that line would make sure that it's not nullified
Right,
from a legal document.
Yep.
yep.
So I would have, my answer is I would think somebody would say and add it back in that process.
Why wouldn't we just leave it in our draft and maybe just ask the question, is this necessary? So
Well,
it doesn't get overlooked. So it doesn't get overlooked in the process.
Because for the sake of simplicity, I mean, I looked at it and was like, what the hell does this mean? And whoever explained it, I went, oh, okay, I get what they're saying. But I don't think it's terribly obvious to a lot of people.
I would say then, Lisa, to your point, I would be in agreement of keeping it if we have town council give us an opinion, whether it's needed or not, before this goes public as in a next round that we would share.
Yeah, I think we need to ask. We
Okay,
wouldn't
so
want it
that
to
means
be
that
overlooked.
we need to ask the selectmen to ask town council because we can't contact town council directly.
Correct, but Sam Stivers has been involved in all this. He'll watch this later and he'll hear this. I don't think it's a heavy lift from where we stand. Just say, is this something we need to keep in this thing for good measure, and let town council just give us an opinion up front. I just want to have an answer from town council before we would share this as a draft that would go public once we're a little bit more buttoned up.
I think it could go right through Mark Purple first, and if he feels it needs to go to the Board of Selectmen, he could put it on as an agenda item. But I know when I have to get a legal opinion, I fill out a form and I send it right to Mark, and he approves or denies the request. So I think we can simplify it more than waiting 2 weeks for another selectmen's meeting and then discuss it, and it's on the agenda. I would suggest doing it that way.
As far as I know, though, and I could be wrong, but my knowledge of watching their meetings, the select board has the autonomy to send something directly to town council firsthand, whether they go through the same process. And Chief, you know it much better than I do. But my watching the board and hearing what they said, since they have all the boards that report to them, they had the autonomy to do it. It doesn't really matter how we get an answer, but I think we just need to get an answer.
I mean, we could submit whatever we work on and put that down as an optional section.
Sounds okay to me.
If needed, optional section after legal review.
Yep. That's fine.
That's why Peter's the chair.
There we go.
I mean, I don't really understand it. I do want to make it simple, but I don't understand it enough, and I don't think it stops us. So it looks like we've discussed.
We have one more section
Oh,
here.
we do? I thought it was the end.
It's
Oh, okay.
Effective date. As far as I understand, once it's passed at a town meeting and then finally approved by the AG's office, it doesn't need an effective date.
Right, exactly.
Unless we want to post, push it off further than when it would finally be approved by the AG's office.
So the rationale for doing that, let's say it gets passed at the end of April and we put a July 1st effective date in, that would give, the town a couple of months to notify all those people that they knew did business in the town who might accidentally now violate the law, an opportunity to know about it instead of, like on May 1st, having somebody show up and say, hey, you can't do that. So maybe it might be a good idea.
Most laws do have a period where only like traffic law, only warnings can be given and for the first 90 days. After that, if you want to do something like that, in the first 30 days of this bylaw, only warnings can be given. But I don't.
Yeah, I know most Massachusetts state laws have a period of time from the time after they're voted on. It's either 90 or 180 days, I think, before they take effect. Presumably that's for the reason.
Right.
From a standpoint of if we need it or if we don't, I think
I'd
that
say
it's,
keep it.
I think that I personally don't think we need it. I think that it could be at whoever the enforcement officer's discretion is for the first whatever, they just give warnings because they wouldn't actually have to go to court or anything until after that. So
Yep.
I think that it's unnecessary to mention it because all these things are just sort of implied. And if people don't know, there's an awareness period at the very beginning of it going into effect that the enforcement agency would just know.
So I'm looking at the bylaw for the Board of Appeals, chapter 174-27, and it says when effective. This chapter and any amendments thereto shall take effect as provided by law upon adoption by town meeting, provided that it is subsequently approved by the Attorney General and published or 90 days elapsed without action by the Attorney General. I think my headphones just died.
I know we heard you.
We heard you the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think they just died more or less.
Chief Paulus's, 5-year-old bylaw proposal doesn't have an effective date section, just as FYI.
I think it could just fall with the regular, this is the first bylaw that the towns ever passed, whatever they've done in the past, whatever's fair,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good either whether you put it in or you don't. That's fine. If you
It's more of
want
a notification, right?
For
I mean-
brevity, I take the stance of I don't think we need to include it.
Yeah.
I would strike it.
Strike
You could
it.
always add it later.
Strike
Alright.
it.
Lee, what do you have? Strike or not?
let's strike it.
All right, that's 6 strikes.
Okay. Congrats, guys. We got someplace through this document. I'm going to go through and just kind of keep the sections that we agreed to. This is going to probably be one of the dumber ways of me doing this, so sorry, guys. You got to watch it happen.
While you're doing that, can you listen while you do it?
I can listen. Yep.
All right, so we got a selectmen's meeting coming up and we're supposed to be given a report. My thought was just a quick 1-minute report, what we've been doing. Present this, a brief summary of the survey results. We want to ask if they can change the charter from 3 forums to 2 forums, counting the survey as a forum. And then we also want to ask, do they plan on putting this at the town meeting? What is their direction? Like, when do they want the report? What is their intention? I don't know that it was mentioned in the review of the warrant articles coming up. So
Hey,
I just
Peter?
kind of wanted to, go ahead,
So
John.
the information I got is that our bylaw was not included in the warrant for the March town meeting, which was delayed to April. So the warrant was closed without our inclusion. So I like our town, but I'm like, what are they doing? So that I would be there at the next meeting with you, and I'll be asking very pointed, blunt questions. Because
Okay.
we're all taking our time to help the town, and I think they're playing games with the warrant.
So this time we're gonna post that as a meeting. So, look for your, I don't know when exactly it's gonna be. The last time I did it, I didn't feel as though I had to post it as a meeting because everything's virtual. How could we possibly deliberate if we're in our own homes and they have to let us in, electronically? It kind of eliminates the possibility of deliberation. So I didn't feel the need to post a meeting, but I guess they feel otherwise. So this time I will post a meeting. It will be a little awkward because we're probably not going to have a quorum and we're not going to have a chance to deliberate. but it will be posted. It's just going to be a formality. If they want to recognize you in the audience, that's their prerogative. But this is what I was planning on doing with your blessing. And John, and I plan on, if they do say that we're not on for the town meeting, then I will follow up with some serious concerns.
Can I ask you a favor? Can you be the good cop? Can I be the bad cop?
All right. I don't know if I've ever been the good cop, by the way.
I was gonna say it, but I let Peter say it.
It's a great growth opportunity.
Those of you who know me on the street. So that's what I was thinking of doing. Obviously, I hope I have everybody's blessing, but
I'm in.
Do you
Sounds
need
good.
do you need four of us or three of us to be there? Just
no,
for, okay,
because there's not going to be there's not going to be any deliberation.
okay.
It's technically only
Because I'm
deliberation.
not going to do an agenda. I mean, I guess the only agenda is going to be submit the report to the selectmen, and anything further than that would have to be on the agenda to vote on, which I'm not going to know what those topics are going to be. So it really would be, I think, unethical to have a vote without it being on the agenda.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a catch. It'd be different if it was in person, and we were caught in the hallway talking about something, and somebody overheard. Like you can't do that when you're all in your own houses. You
Yeah.
can't really. It's impossible. So.
But
Anyway,
I-
that's what's going to be. If you're scratching your head, why is that meeting posted? That's going to be why.
Okay.
But
So the next
Peter, Pete,
Go
before you
ahead,
go
Susie.
on, I mean, I'm really concerned about why they didn't put it on the warrant. Because I thought we were all working to a schedule,
Right.
and I don't want this to be a career for me. I don't know about the rest of you, but,
Mhm.
let's get it done.
Yeah. I mean, we are making some headway. I get it. I mean, it is difficult because, it's difficult.
Yeah.
I took 2 Advil before I signed on. But yeah, it's difficult, and it's much more enjoyable when it's harder to do it virtual. I think it's much more enjoyable when we're all, we could, meet each other and in person, but I think it makes it more difficult. But in any event, the agenda for the next meeting, I kind of made it a point that I wanted to do this as a group. What do you think we should talk about at the next? Oh, I see Tim has his finger up.
Before we jump into that, I just want to run this by everybody. I did my little sidebar activity over here.
Okay.
Here's what the outline looks like if we consolidate everything into one space. We have a scope, a definitions, an industrial noise section, a day and times section, prohibited activities, exemptions, violations and penalties, enforcement, and then the severability section if we have to keep it. So that's the consolidated bylaw outline that we would have.
Mhm.
I agree.
So this is everything that was in the document we went through. I don't know if anybody, and it may be or may not be appropriate. I think it would be appropriate if anybody has other individual sections that they think aren't covered, that we would add into this, because the homework from this could be, what do you think goes in that section activity?
This is John's one pager.
I like it.
That's called the title page. There's several chapters after that.
Yeah.
So
You can only wish. I
Can we
can only wish.
can we take out the part at the bottom that says noise, MAHB model, and
Well,
the enforcement, because we've got enforcement up above now.
this is just the start of what we just.
Okay.
So I just moved the outline up top, and then if you want to see the reference to what the sections are or everything out further, it's all here. I didn't delete anything. I just moved it down.
Okay.
Looks good.
And then I named this, and I'll give this to John later, but I have a name for the document, so that way when I share it with everybody, it's all there.
I have a question.
Yep.
I didn't see anything in here, and I looked in the survey, and I have some unfortunate experience in in my background, and kind of surprised that nothing's on the books. Any appetite to address animal noise in the bylaw? I noticed that that's kind of omitted, but I did see a lot of comments about it in the survey. I did check with the ACO, and there's basically nothing on the books.
So if that would come into effect, it would fall underneath either prohibited activities or exemptions as a location for where that would go. So without solving tonight some of these things, because we were trying not to do that, I would say to that point, there's probably a section for it in what we have in the outline, and we would just define whether it's prohibited or it's exempt.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, living next to a kennel, obviously, I would like to see something, but I guess I'm the only one who lives next to a kennel.
So to that point, Chief, is there anything or any scenario that we can think of that would not fall underneath one of these sections as an appropriate title?
Yeah, I'll have to do some research. I keep referring back to that document from 5 years ago, but I do remember sitting with Sam, and we just tried to go through all of the other samples that we had and make sure that nothing was missed. So tomorrow I'm gonna review that in depth again. But I mean, that's gonna be the committee's decision. I'm really in tune to the fact that we have to get something simple and something presentable that's going to pass. It'd be great if we could do the whole enchilada right now, but I think we gotta start slow and build up. That's just my opinion.
So on the agenda for next week for homework, how about we all be familiar with Chief Paulus's prior in Sam's document and see how that might apply on the outline that we have kind of framed out at this meeting, as well as any other bylaws that you think might apply. You want to take a section out of a certain bylaw and plug it in, or think it should be in. That would be kind of, I guess, the homework assignment.
Hey,
Right.
Peter,
Yep.
it matches this, except for Chief Policies has a judicial review little section that we didn't include, a little variance, but otherwise it's every section pretty well matches, because as
Figure out
as
what we're
we-
going to put in the section.
yeah, so as we were discussing, I was actually reading each of the sections again from Chief Policies, and I kind of like the way it's written. So
So that could be homework. And why don't we do this? Review for, a possible, for a possible adoption into the outline that we have worked on tonight.
Review for inclusion.
Yeah.
And can we get that sent out to us?
Steal things, plug it in wherever it fits.
Yes, Lee, I have it here, but I don't know if I should send it. I'm pretty sure I have the same one we've been referencing, but
We should, well, should we make that part of tonight's meeting minutes, that document?
I mean,
Yes.
the policies should be part of the meeting minutes. We've looked at it a couple times, and we've
Okay.
discussed, so that should be part, and so should this outline revision document that I've been compiling. But back to my question, I think that the answer is it's all here. Is there a section missing from this that we think some item, activity, situation would not fall underneath one of these already defined sections?
I think it all fits.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't
So-
know, I'd have to look. I don't see anything in the draft bylaw around animals. So Chief, I don't know if maybe that wasn't an issue back then. That maybe this has come up more often and you're getting more complaints. But we'd have to figure out how to put that in.
I know it seems like, I don't know if it's my imagination, but like chickens, by regular homeowners seems to be a thing on the rise in the last 5 years. And I
Definitely.
was walking my dog not too long ago, and somebody had a rooster, and I could not imagine living next to a rooster.
Mhm. I've got one that lives next to a
Surprised that
kennel.
never came up, but I mean, I certainly would not oppose.
I think
The rooster crows every morning for me because they've got sort of a little farm at the Southborough Kennel too.
You know what? It kind of cracks me up. Okay, I've lived in Southborough my entire life. And when it was made up mostly of, a few, the schools, a few large estates and lots of farms and barns and animals. And now it's like everybody who wants to be so rural complains about chickens or the smell from cows or whatever. It just cracks me up. It just really cracks me up.
Yeah, I miss the cows though. I miss the Belted Galloways. Anyway, let's finish. So that sounds like you've got our agenda then, Peter.
Well, all I have is homework, review the chief's bylaw, and then I'm going to say we're going to work further on the outline, right?
So I think we need some more forward progress if we can figure out how to do that. Because reviewing it and discussing it, like we did get someplace today. We have an outline. We have some stuff. A number of people, and I'm not super familiar with Chief's document. I don't know if that should be plug and play into some of what this outline would be and keep pieces, and then we start to populate a new thing. If we should make working groups and say a couple people take this section, a couple people take this section, and try to, I don't know if that's going to be a productive way of doing it, but we have these meetings every week. I would be of an opinion that maybe we don't need to do a meeting 2 weeks in a row, and we could maybe use some extra time in a smaller group and come back with something that we think we can put forward, but only if it's worth the effort. Like, I don't want people to like go off and then we come back and we're completely different and we think we're going to waste a bunch of time. But if that is a faster path forward, I mean, like, it'd be nice if we were someplace within 2 to 3 weeks and have another public forum and then another meeting or two for revisions, and then we're at the time because we're out of time.
Well, hopefully at the selectmen's meeting, we'll get some kind of direction. If they say we're not on the town meeting, all right, we could take this, there's no rush.
Or we just stop working on this,
Right.
or it turns into a citizen's petition.
Yeah.
Right,
Because I mean, like, that's not an acceptable,
right.
I don't know about you guys, but that's not an acceptable use of my time if
Nope.
I'm doing all this effort for literally no reason.
Yep, I agree.
I just feel like we stay the course with the expectation it's going to be on the warrant article, or be a warrant article on the whatever they call that thing. But I still am asking the question: how can we get some momentum to start getting these sections completed, that we can start feeling like we have something to react to in an appropriate way?
I think we're just gonna have to go down like we did tonight and go down, and if we looked at, the chief's thing and see if that fits, or we want to change it, have a discussion on each one, just like we did tonight. We talked about measuring devices, we had a debate, we had a vote, we like that kind of stuff. We need to do that on each one of those, and we'll knock out a couple every meeting or so. And at the end of the day, we'll get something that hopefully not everybody's going to be happy, but something that's going to be hopefully a good compromise and something that's going to be passable. Lisa, you got your hand up.
I think we should take the outline as well as the draft noise bylaw, but I think we should also refer back to the survey and the list of noises that that we ask people to respond to, and make sure they're being addressed in the noise bylaw in some manner. So like, we know that animals were on the survey and we got feedback on animals. So how are we going to address those things? So I think we need to go back to that survey and get the, understand, what the needs are of our residents as we start to craft this and fill in
But wouldn't
the,
that be part of our
section.
homework as we go
Yeah.
through and decide
Right.
what we want
Yeah,
to put in each
but-
section?
but I'm just saying, I think we need to look at that too and make sure that we hit those points.
But as a group, do you think we need to go through that again?
Well, I think in our homework, we need to pull that together.
Yeah.
And so as we do our homework, that's just another thing that we need to refer to.
Yeah.
So to make
mean-
sure that we're not missing those things.
We have the 3 people that put the survey together. I'm sure they're very familiar with the results. So I feel pretty confident that that they would speak up if there was something in contradiction to the survey.
I feel like a check and balance here is appropriate though. So as we put this together, what we should do after we feel like we got someplace is go back to the survey results during a meeting. And we should say, okay, we have this section written this way. The survey results have a number of people that have voiced these concerns. Have we answered them? If the answer is no, then we need to spend more time on it. If the answer is yes, then that section could be considered maybe wrapped up when we feel comfortable with it. But I think that that's a really appropriate time. At least I don't know if that's right or wrong for how you're thinking about it, but I think a good check and balance system,
Yeah.
once we have it moving forward, is really necessary, and it's something we're gonna have to do.
Okay, Lee, you have your hand up patiently?
I do. So I'm thinking, why don't we sort of combine what the Tim's suggestion from before with what we were doing, and say that next meeting will be probably relatively brief compared to the ones we've been having lately, where we will go over, the previous efforts, and essentially then divide the document up into 2 groups, and split us into 2 groups of 3. So we don't have a quorum and aren't deliberating, and that the following then. So the purpose of next week's will be to divide the document up and to create the groups, and hopefully you don't put, like, say, all the people who want noise to end early with all the in one group, and all the people who want noise to end late in another group. That we try to sort of divide it so that we end up with a mixture of people. And then Peter, you get the free pass as the chair, because if you join one of these groups, you would give us a quorum. And then the following week we meet up with each group will produce a proposed written draft for their assignments, and that way then the other half can take a look at what the first 3 people came up with. That might be a way of making us more efficient, because I think 2 groups of 3 will be more efficient than a group of 7
I agree.
in discussing it.
Lee, I like that idea. I have a thought that might help us get further to start that.
Go ahead.
There's 8 topics here. Some of these seem to be less problematic than others.
Right.
So maybe we could pick 2 of these topics for next week. So after we do the review, maybe 2 of these topics we can dive into with some level of certainty that we can get through maybe one of the easier ones and then one more complicated one during a meeting. So that way we can maybe take off some of that homework assignment you just mentioned, or,
We've already done day and time hours, so we've already done that one. Definitions is going to have to wait to see what the rest of it looks like. It's really, the prohibited activities, the exemptions, the violations and penalties and enforcement. Those 4 are the meat of writing this thing.
so if we,
I think violations and penalties are pretty simple. I mean, that's just,
Yeah, that's probably true.
and enforcement, I think, simple too. I mean, who's going to
And
enforce
scope,
it?
and scope, we kind of get through that. So I think Lee, you've highlighted, which is the provision and exemptions are the meat of the
Right, I
work,
mean,
and then
yeah.
definitions falls out after that.
Do
So
you
it's
think,
assigned one working group to do prohibited activities and the others to do exemptions.
Well, I'm not sure that, I mean, the difficult ones are gonna be contentious and
Right.
I'm not sure that I'm real comfortable with, you know, not having the group discuss what's gonna go in those. I think that if we do the homework that Pete suggested and, okay, what do we want in there? We've got the framework still, the words are still there from the MAHB one. If we all look at the 3617 draft and know what we want in there, I would think we would be able to work through them pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would agree too. I think we got to do it as the group.
All right.
do you think it might be possible to look at the draft and use that as a framework, then create a total new document?
Yes.
We're gonna take your draft and any other draft and see what we like and plug in for those areas that need more work.
So let's just quick, not to get into it, just a quick spot check, if that's fine. Prohibited acts, person owning, leasing, or controlling operation of any sources of noise. I'm not going to read every single word here. Electric motors, internal combustion engines, employed in outdoor construction, demolition, or earth moving. No person shall operate an engine of any standing motor vehicle with a weight in excess. This would be idling, yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, any noise plainly audible. So that would be in the prohibited acts, like a pretty simple approach to that.
Mhm.
Now, whether or not the words say the same is different, but like the context is defining things like equipment and noise coming from it, electric motors and construction activity with hours.
Talk about the
homework
animals.
we need to do. We need to go through those and see what we're comfortable with. Yeah, everybody, and then we'll come together and, you know, I think we should specifically look at the Chiefs one, so we're all kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
And if we want to add something from somewhere else, Somerville or wherever, and say, well, then you can plug it in. But I think we should use the Chiefs one because it's we're familiar with it. It's been, you know, it's something to go with. It's a starting point.
All right. So that sounds like that'll be our agenda for next.
Yeah. Some of these are going to be very easy. Some of these they're going to be tenuous, but I think some of us, you know, we all are taking different looks at these, and I don't think it would be fair to split up the group.
So on the agenda, are we trying to hit one of these topics in length, or do we think that'll be a natural byproduct?
Well, let's just go through what let's just take it as it goes. If we show up and we have homework done and everybody's in agreement on things, it'll go fast. If we want to have debate, we have debate. That's our job. That's what we got to do. So,
Okay, then
it may
let's
take one
try
day, it may take a bunch.
let's try as a effort of this. There's 8 topics here. Some of them seem less contentious than others. Let's, as a goal, hit 3 of them by the end of the meeting. Let's try to have 3 of them done. We can start with the less contentious ones. It could simply be, you know, scope and enforcement if we want to start with there. But, you know, like something that we think we're less, just so we can feel like we're making solid progress from this list. Mental weapons.
I mean, I think if we just go down the list is the list. If whatever order it is, we'll just stop when we get tired. I mean, half of those are going to be very easy, and then half are going to take some debate.
Just to let you know, I mean, all that language, I mean, that was all, call it what you want, borrowed from a set of 15, 20 noise ordinances. So I imagine it's all gone through some type of legal scrutiny. But, you know, that's what we did. We spread all these policies across the table, and then we each gave each other a few every week. We highlighted what we liked. We brought it back. It all needs to be updated because it is 5 years old. But we did go by, my experience was that noise meters were problematic. So I had put out a request to the Mass Chiefs of Police that anybody that had a bylaw that they felt worked for them, their police department, to forward it to me that didn't involve a noise meter. So that's the history of it.
And something else to keep in mind, that the chief and Sam's work was done absence of the survey. So the survey, like Lisa said, we should pay attention to that because they didn't have that to work with. So had they done that, maybe they would have made things a little differently. So we do have to pay attention to the survey and make sure that we address, what we found in the survey. They didn't have that luxury, so we're going to juggle that part of it too. All right, I'm ready to close.
Before you close, I just a couple of quick things. One,
Because you were late, you want to make up for coming in late? Is that what you're trying to do?
yeah, right. Next week's meeting, I have a conflicting meeting that ends at 7:30. Can we start at 7:30? Otherwise, I'll just be late if we can't start at 7:30. But
it's fine with me. Let me go down the list. Lisa, you fine with 7:30?
Sure.
John?
Yep.
Cindy?
Sure.
I'm fine with it. Lee? You're
I'm fine with it.
Jim?
Yep.
All right, so 7:30.
And then I have one other request. I have a noise question that doesn't belong in part of this committee. If after we are no longer live, if particularly the chief can stay on, I just want to ask a local noise question.
Okay. All right, I'm going to take just a quick.
I got one quick question that I was thinking about things that may not be on the list of outline. And the one topic that came up from the survey, and I'm trying to figure out where it fits, if it goes underneath something and I haven't been able to answer. Alerts and notifications. Do you guys see that falls underneath one of these other topics, or should that be its own section? If we would include it.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by
Yeah,
alert
what do you mean by alert?
notification?
Like if you would have to notify your neighbors about taking your trees down or something like that, or some activity like that. We talked before about like maybe St. Mark's is doing fireworks and they want to, as part of their permitting process, they need to alert the abutters because it's after the hours that were adopted. Like
So
something like that. Where does that fit, and do we need
I'd make it its own section.
Yeah.
Easiest.
And would that
And
go,
it seems when we
next
had-
to permitting or part of permitting? I don't know. Is that one of our sections?
Well,
We go up to day after day and time hours probably.
permitting was part of exemptions, as part of like getting approved by the, say,
Yeah, it could be an exemption. Yeah, like, unless given an exemption by the, it could be an exemption. And part of the exemption would be you have to notify your neighbors.
Well, if the Board of Selectmen or anybody else that was giving these type of things, they can make it part of the conditions.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that could go into here.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we had the public forum, didn't somebody come up with a suggestion about doing exactly that? And I can remember thinking it was a really good idea at the time.
Yeah, that was by Diana Bell during the first one. She brought it up during that time. I just was trying to think about where should that go, because it was something there and I was having a hard time placing it underneath one of our outline items. So I just wanted to make sure that we had that as a thought.
We can address all these. This isn't if we will do our research and we find we need more or whatever, we can add to it. It's just a little bit of a
Why don't we
framework.
just
It's not
leave it where it
official.
is for right now, where you stuck it, just to remind us that
Yeah.
where that's not from a document, it was like from a person.
Okay. That'll be part of the homework. I just dropped it in this one spot for now.
Yeah.
I will send Peter an email about the homework and about the change in the meeting time next week, in case he doesn't pick up on it. Everybody with a show of hands, who wants to adjourn?
Woo-hoo.
I see 6 hands. Meeting adjourned at 9:49. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
So-
you. Good
So
night.
here's my question for people. I've been hearing this sound for like several months. It's not a continuous noise. It sort of sounds, my wife thought it was somebody shooting a gun. I said I didn't think it was a gun. It sounded like, to me, more like somebody, say, dropping a dumpster, the lid on a dumpster. So it's a sort of a clanging sound. And it doesn't always seem to be coming from the same absolute direction. Like sometimes it'll be coming this way, sometimes it'll come from that side of my house. At least that's the way it sounds. And it happens.
Do you live near the turnpike?
I do.
So when they did the turnpike, they ground the road. And when they grind the road, they have that unlevel section where the grinding is ending. That's very tough. And any dump trucks or any of those, especially those roll-offs with the dumpster that slide, those go boom, boom, boom. You hear, because I hear it all the time. It was driving me crazy at my house because I can actually see the turnpike.
Yeah, that would be consistent with the noise that I hear.
I called the Weston Barracks. That's what handles the turnpike. And I talked to the sergeant there, and he assured me that once that pavement was done, that wouldn't continue. And I did notice it's considerably quiet. It's quiet now in the last couple of weeks. And, none of the backup alarms that you hear from all those devices that they're using out there is going off anymore.
Yeah, I live on Powder Mill off of Oregon Road. So,
that's probably what, yeah. So you were getting on the other end?
Yeah.
With the start and the finish. That's where you get.
And it just happens, because, it's worse now because the leaves are off the trees.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
that sounds like exactly what it is. All right.